So here we go with our 31-day challenge. I was supposed to do a video a day the whole month of October, but that got sidetracked. So I am going to make sure I have all 31 videos Christmas countdown up by November, whatever Thanksgiving is. I think it might be the 28th this year. So today I'm doing number 6 and maybe 7 and 8. We'll see what happens. But I want to finish up the transfers because I have 5 projects already set for clay and the new molds. The first project, or number 6, is this. I'm using this arched project board, and I'm going to be using the Christmas tree from the Crimson Velvet. You've seen that Christmas tree used in this arch quite a bit if you're on the IOD tribe, but I'm doing it a little different. I am going to blend paint all around the background of the frame so that it kind of coincides with the background of the tree and looks like it's all part of one thing. So the first thing I do is I put on a coat of chalk synthesis paint from Wise Owl Paint, and this is in a color called Antique Villa. It's like an antique white, and it acts as my base and giving for my raw wood, but it also acts as my base for the beginning of blending. And here I start blending with some gray paint, and the color that I am using is called Peppercorn. And you can see as you blend it, as long as that white paint is that white paint is wet, you can keep blending the colors and it lightens and darkens. And you'll see I keep adding several other colors. So far I have white and a dark gray, and then I am going to have a few other colors, including a golden and a little bit of blue, and even some real metallic paint. Also, you see here I'm putting on a rusty color, which is called iron oxide, and I'm also putting on some gold. And I just keep blending it, just keep moving it around till it gets to be how I like it, how it matches with that transfer color. I know people do blending different ways, but I just keep stippling my colors and running them one into each other till I get that muted marbled background. And I also, as you can see, I use a little bit of a palette knife every now and then just to give it a little bit of an edge, a little different dimension. And I am also, you'll notice the center where that tree is going to be burnished in. I am making sure I have at least a 1/2 inch to 1 inch all around where the tree is going to be, just in case I don't get it exactly in the center. I want to make sure that it's going to look okay. And every now and then you see I bring the actual transfer in to see where the gold stops on the background and where it's darker and where it's lighter, where there's more of white, where there's a little more of a brown, there's a little more blue in that one corner. So I just keep putting those different colors on, and then I'm going to add some white to lighten it up a little bit. It's just a process. It takes a while. It's actually fun to just watch the colors blend together and changes the background. What I'm doing with the different colors is actually stippling. I'm just taking the bristles and kind of pouncing them into the different colors until they blend together. And it softens the color. You put a little color on and then you pounce over it to soften it and blend it into the other colors. It's the metallic gold that really makes this frame pop, and there's a lot of really pretty gold in that transfer around the tree and on the tree, and it just kind of glistens, so it looks really beautiful. Once I had the frame exactly how I wanted it, I took the transfer and I pushed it into the corners of the frame, and then I cut around it. And it didn't come out exactly, but it came out pretty close. And after I actually burnished it in, I went ahead and I did do some blending right along the edges so that you couldn't tell where it didn't match perfectly. And then we let it dry and it was ready for some typography. So I was going to use the tinsel transfer, but I felt like the gold would just get lost on this. So I went ahead and found a scripture I wanted to use, and I used the apothecary label stamps to stamp out unto us a child is born. And what I used for ink is I used the mixing white from IOD and just used that capital letter script and went across. And when it was all finished, again, I let that dry. And then I did go ahead and put a top coat over it just to seal in that ink and to make sure nothing was going to smudge or get scratched. I put my stamps, each one of these individual stamps is on a 1 by 1 inch piece of the mounts, and it makes it so much easier not to have a big giant piece of mount when you're just doing one little letter. And once they're all done, I am super careful with these stamps. They are so tiny and so easy to lose. So I keep a plate or a bowl nearby and I put them in it right away and I go wash them right away and get them put away because you do not want to lose one of these letters. This is a super valuable stamp set for doing small projects. I also do not film the putting the top coat on. I just feel like it's a lot of time that would be wasted and I'd rather show other things. So the lettering is done, the background is done, mostly done, and now it's time to burnish on the transfer. So I just go ahead and put it in there. Take me a little bit to get it exactly where I want it and then burnish it in. There is a top coat or underneath this transfer, so it does go on super, super easy. It's already sealed underneath, and once I get it to the place that I like it, I am going to seal the top of the whole thing. But one thing I do is once this transfer is all the way on, I decide that I would like to add one more thing. If you notice how the transfer kind of has that smoky effect up in the corners. So what I'm going to use to get that smoky effect is I am going to use some liming wax and I'm just going to, again, I'm going to stipple in the liming wax and then soften the edges and leave it to really give it that smoky kind of cloudy look that just really makes it look more natural. And when it was all done, I was super happy with how it came out. And it was time to let the liming wax dry. And that was the end. That was it. We painted the backs, we painted the edges, and this piece is ready to go to its future home. What a great idea. OD had with these arch project boards. They are so perfect for this kind of application. And just the idea of the arch just makes them so much more elegant and just perfect for holiday decor. And here is the finished project. This is definitely my favorite IOD Christmas release ever. And I just can't wait to finish using all the different parts of these transfers. And now on to project number 7. I got this little galvanized double bucket display piece at Michael's in their clearance rack. It was less than $7. In the corner of their store, they have a bunch of clearance items, and I bought all they had. They had like 4 of these, and it's perfect for what I'm using it for. I am going to make a little candy bucket for candy canes because that's about the right size these little buckets are. First thing I did was scrub it really well to try to get whatever oils or anything that might be on it to prevent the paint from sticking and then to prevent the um, transfers from sticking. So once that was all set, I knew I was going to use Kitschy Christmas again and really make this look like a little old fashioned bucket for holding your Christmas candy canes. So I'm using the Santa Claus, I'm using a couple of the little children, one of the Christmas trees, one of the little elves that's bringing one of the presents, and I'm going to do both sides of these buckets and make it so it's double sided. So I painted it, put 2 coats of chalk paint on, and then put a sealer over that. And it is ready to have the transfers burnished on. And I'm starting with Santa Claus. And I did kind of a messy paint. The thing was actually had white paint. It must have had a wash or something they did. So it had a little bit of white paint on it already, but I kind of did like a messy paint job. Wasn't real perfect. And I'm going to go ahead at the end and sand it back a little bit and put a little dark wax on it and distress it so it's much more aged. I'm using that little elf bringing a present to put underneath the Christmas tree and just overlap him a little bit so it looks a little more natural. And then I'm putting the 2 little girls right next to Santa Claus, and they're also going to be overlapped. And they're just standing next to Santa Claus. Their scale is they're a little bigger than they should be for that size, but they look perfect. And they're definitely the little kitschy Christmas girls. In order to give this little piece of home decor a little bit more of a vintage or distressed look, I sanded it back a little bit, especially along the rim where you have those grooves, and then I added some clear wax and I put the clear wax on with my hand. It's a Miss Mustard Seed clear wax. It's totally safe. So I just put the clear wax on and then I put a little bit of dark wax on to distress it. And I just love the way it came out. It'll be the perfect little container for candy canes. And after the wax application was all set, I put a little bit of artificial greenery on the handle just to give it a little more of a festive look. Project number 3 for this video and number 8 for the challenge is this jar that I am going to put some of the tinsel transfer on. I got this jar at a yard sale. I think I paid maybe $1 for it, but it's a nice big jar with a bail handle, and I have been wondering what I'm going to do with it. I want to put a candle in it, and then I saw someone use the tinsel on a jar on the IOD tribe page, and I knew that's what I was going to do. So the first part of the design that I'm using is the script, Born is the King, and I want that to be in the middle, and I want it's kind of like a wreath or a frame around it. So I'm going to have to get creative with the next part of the tinsel transfer. So the tinsel transfer is the gold leaf that you apply to your project, and it is, I think, a little trickier than the other transfers, and especially the letters because they're so thin. So take your time when you are applying them and just go over them. So I decided I would use this giant horizontal, which I'm sure is something that would have gone the other way. I am using it vertically and I'm cutting it in half, because if I used it without cutting it, I would miss my whole Born is the King script. So I'm cutting it in half and putting half on each side. And then I'm going to take another part of the design of the transfer page and cut that in half and put that in the space up at the top where there is a big space because of cutting these apart. At this point, I just needed something to fill in that little bit, that little space. And because that space is especially a sharp edge, I really wanted to go over that. So I went right over it. I cut another one of the little designs in half. It basically was just a really small filigree one, kind of like a little swag. It wasn't one that had a center or anything. Cut it in half and just put it right over the other one where I thought it looked good. A little bit of leaves coming into the inside, and you can read the whole thing. Born is the King. It's not covered up by any of the design of transfer. So once I got both pieces, the top and the bottom, covered, I was all set to put a candle inside this particular jar. And I purchased 12 outdoor flickering candles that are run by battery. And I just love them. And they are perfect for inside jars outside that you want to really show, just have some light and some flickering. It just creates really a Christmas mood. So I will put the link to those, and everything I've used, I will try to put a link in the description. And here is the whole thing all done, all 3 projects. And we will see you at project number 9 coming up very soon.